In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. The main topic of this session is about what we'll cover. The profound theological issue known as Imam Mahdi represents the promised figure who is widely recognized as the central savior of all humanity, destined to bring ultimate justice and peace to the entire world. It is also known by other names, and we will discuss the details of this topic. We want to focus on this issue in today's world and in the global context, especially in the West and its influence. Even the most non-believing people, when faced with hardship, distress, and the difficulties they encounter, end up feeling the need for a savior or a leader. Strangely, they reach this point not out of faith or belief, but because of their circumstances. Nor is there any hope left that someone will come down from the sky, or that an earthly figure will suddenly appear and by force put an end to all this oppression, corruption, misery, poverty, and suffering, and do something about it. This hope has faded everywhere, and even in the Christian world, this sense of expectation and need is even more pronounced and more widely discussed. The reason is clear. The West has experienced disappointment much faster and more deeply than the East. It has been battered from place to place, has suffered, and has become disillusioned, not only with the promises of science and technology or economic and political salvation, but also with all worldly promises and the assurances of modern civilization. There is nothing left to believe in anymore, and in this regard, they have increasingly felt the need for the emergence of a savior, and have come to this conclusion. So this discussion about the Imam of the time, the savior, and these related issues is not just a religious matter. It has also taken on a heartfelt emotional aspect. We are still hopeful that a new technology will be found, a new science, a new discovery, a cure for diseases, for heart conditions, for all these sufferings we face. But they, those ahead of us, are more advanced than us, both in terms of knowledge and technical understanding. They have truly realized that this is nothing but an illusion. Well, technology can no longer provide a solution for us. This is a rational conclusion after all. Technology is a creation of humans, and a human creation cannot save humanity. If something is a creation, it cannot be the solution. So this is not something that can be confirmed. But yes, this discussion about a savior and an imam, one could say that at no point in history has it been as serious as it is today. It has become an existential need, something even more fundamental than a matter of belief. This belief has naturally turned into a need. Even non-believers have developed this need. And if everyone has hope for salvation, that salvation is expected to come from the heavens in the form of a savior. We feel that this savior in some ways is very similar to the savior described in Islamic and Christian narratives, the one who is supposed to bring salvation. The collection of narratives shows that this savior is powerful, dominant. The attribute of the imam's dominance, is emphasized. Imam Mahdi, who is supposed to appear at the end of times, will be the source of divine wrath and punishment. That's why, according to our accounts, a vast portion, half or even two-thirds of humanity will be destroyed in the event of his appearance. Those who remain will be forced to believe and submit. So this salvation is a salvation through force, a divine punishment that is imposed. This is not a spiritual salvation or guidance. The emergence of the Imam is not an emergence of merciful guidance, nor is it out of love and kindness. All the narrations we have in the world of Islam about the end times are entirely dominated by wrath and punishment. Well, now imagine if something is really going to happen, if this world is entirely filled with chaos and every Friday is marked by disbelief, corruption, and the madness of war. So much blood has been shed that reason and compassion are being suppressed. The important thing is not forgiveness, but truly a different kind of judgment, a wrath that must descend upon all this darkness and shatter the very foundation of this madness in order to save humanity. Everyone feels this chaos, or at least many of us do. Even the mere explanation of this idea, from the very beginning, from the womb, we've seen this thought as a mistake. No, the narrations do not convey such a concept to us. There are narrations in the core of Shia tradition that show the reality of the current situation. There is no longer any room for words, advice, compassion, or sacrifice for one another. Day by day, humanity must move beyond this. Well, this general discussion has been going on for years and hasn't reached a conclusion. Let's separate the very concept of the Imam and the appearance of the Imam into two topics. One is the Imam as the Savior. First, we need to understand what kind of being the Savior Imam is, what kind of human essence he has. The other is the issue of his appearance, the appearance of the Imam. We need to understand what appearance means, what the appearance of the Imam is. For example, what does appearance really mean? Is appearance really just that someone comes out openly and is revealed? Is that what it means? This is a very simplistic concept, and it really can't be the correct understanding. Now, we see that at that time he is in the well. Let's consider, why is it that such an important issue in history, one that is supposed to determine the fate of all of history and the civilization of humanity, is only discussed in this way in the narrations, but in the Quran there is not even a hint of it? Why is that? Why is such an important issue not mentioned in the Quran? That is, in the way it appears in the narrations, there is absolutely no trace of it in the Quran. This very issue leads us, now Zabani says this, to the conclusion that these narrations, or many of them, are baseless, widespread, and superstitious. They're a kind of deception, or perhaps our interpretation and understanding of these narrations is something else entirely, and what we have understood shouldn't necessarily be the case for now. This is one of those cases. So, for example, pray. In Shia Islamic narrations, we have signs that say, whenever certain signs appear in nature during the summer, at that time be cautious and alert. The appearance of Siavash and Khorasan, for example, is one of these. This event happened, and if you consider that Siavash was in Khorasan, that was 1,200 years ago. What does that mean for us now? 1,200 years? Kids, he didn't give his soul, did he? What does that mean? Many of the events recorded in history that are supposed to be signs of the appearance, thank you, have happened. And this appearance, they say, didn't give his soul, or these narrations, these signs, are they the power of a savior, or is the concept of appearance something else? You see, it's a different discussion. Or did they really appear? Did this event really happen? Did Imam Zaman really appear himself? Maybe not. You see, that's another discussion. But among us, this is a general idea among people, meaning that in every era, these signs, the collection of signs that come from this concept, are mostly interpreted as referring to a savior. Why? Because many of these have also happened throughout history, right? And these things have happened, but there were people who didn't accept them, or very few did, or some praised them. So why do they still do this with these signs? This is one of the signs of the engineers of the time, which is related to the Siavashs. Apparently, greetings were also given to the Siavashs, and yes, this too was influenced by the engineering works by the engineers themselves. After the event of Imam Sabin, the other Imams were really, you could say, hidden. Imam Sadrat, the Imams had to hustle to make a living. No one really had any credibility with them. Imam Sadiq is one of the Umayyads who had a public appearance. For almost 200 years he remained in a better situation until things were resolved, and from the secret design of the world, people, who were mostly women, would turn to him. Look. Again, people turned away from this appearance and it became hidden. Look, I seek refuge in this, and honestly, I do not even have it in my mind right now. There have been other scholars as well. I'll talk about them in relation to this era. Many of these scholars are connected to the appearance of the Imam of the time, related to the 5th or 6th century, that era when there was a bit of a decline, and then we see that in that period, truly great mystics emerged, just as the 5th and 6th centuries were times of emergence. So you see, these scholars were connected to the mystics of their own time. It was true that at that time they were making efforts, but they were not being recognized. These are the ones. They form these groups and they eliminate them. They show them and they kill them, and still we are waiting for each other. Our circle remains. The truth is, if we look at the knowledge of the self within ourselves, the Imam of the time, with all the complexities that we have learned from the Imams of the lineage of Islam, if our circle invites us to love, to God's command, to sincerity, are we ready? Are we at least ready to quickly say yes and live that way, to live according to the path of the Imams? Who among us is ready? We, the seminarians, have trampled on even the most basic principles, and we even say these are superstitions, these are foolishness, these are in conflict with transformation, humanity, progress, welfare, and advancement. We say honesty is worthless, honesty is impossible, it's outdated. We have trampled on these things. So, if the Imam of the time were to call us, for example, with people who have such views and such attitudes, then in every era the Imam of the time has been forced, and people have acted this way, and many of them have been killed. After the early Imams of Islam, there were great figures, and most of them were also killed. So it's not as if this claim is not confirmed. If that Imam of the time is the one who, at the end of times, with that anger and wrath, is supposed to establish divine justice, and only that Imam of the time is meant, then what does that have to do with me? Until the day these friends die, well, what connection do I have with that time? Nothing. So are the graves supposed to be my proof? In our understanding, all these generations, billions of people, came and went before the appearance without an Imam. Does that mean they were misguided? That they had no proof or guidance? Is that how it is? Oh, no. We have in our traditions, we have hadiths that say God never leaves any generation or era without a living proof and Imam. There has never been a time without a living Imam, the Imam of the time. Otherwise, God himself says, I am far above letting my proof and Imam be hidden from people or letting anyone be excused from knowing my religion. And if that Imam of the time appears, then if the Imam is not a guide, that Imam will come to wipe out, to purify, to destroy. He will erase the statistics of the infidel and oppressive civilization, which is filled with crime everywhere. He will wipe it clean. There is no salvation in that. That is retribution. Let's clarify this. It is retributive guidance, retributive punishment. An Imam of guidance and the concept of salvation that comes from guidance, love, and knowledge, these Imams exist in all eras. The connection between the appearance of that final Imam in every era is that there is salvation for every time on earth. They are the Imams of the age and the friends of God. And anyone who has a lofty calling will find them. Anyone with a lofty calling. These Imams actually go to the people find them, and they guide them. For families, for the heart, for both. What is the true path? Why do we keep praying for deliverance, reciting the supplication for the Imam's reappearance, asking for him to appear? If we were even a little bit prepared, we would be afraid. The reason is that his reappearance is an appearance of wrath and anger, a manifestation of divine might. He comes to cleanse the earth of oppression, corruption, disbelief, polytheism, and hypocrisy. There are some who remain, and then they become capable and accept faith. At that time, it is said, the era of paradise will begin on earth. Interestingly, there is a narration that says his rule will last for 7 years, and then the same Imam will pass away, and his deputies will be appointed, and in this way the history of humanity will come to a close. So we really need to have a longing for that time, but if we have even a little bit of it, it's exactly like praying to God to send us his wrath and punishment. Well, that's the same as the stories of the prophets. We always talk about the uprising, but why doesn't it come? Tell those people that it will come, and when it does, you'll be shocked because we keep insisting on it. This stubbornness is about us. We shouldn't have that kind of longing unless we truly want to take ourselves to account, and then if we really want it, we should ask for it to be gathered for us. This is how we are. Therefore, we cannot claim that salvation from suffering and true guidance is exclusive to that final reappearance and its time. And as I've said before and I repeat, if that were the case, then what about the countless billions of people who lived and died before that time? They came and went without the Imam, and we know that the Imam is also a source of grace. So all of these people came and went without the Imam, so they have no problem at all then. So we shouldn't make these things up ourselves. So in every era, the Imam of that time is present, and these are God's chosen ones, the foremost in guidance. And anyone who seeks guidance, knowledge, and love will find them, and through their guidance they will be saved both from punishment and from misguidance. This salvation is deliverance from the torments and errors of this world, and it is about attaining and understanding the love of the Imam as well as progressing spiritually. Now, the form may be that of a messenger, a guide, or a unifier. Let's suppose that Consider the various ancient prophecies that currently exist in the Christian world regarding the long-awaited second coming of Jesus Christ, the resurrection of the dead, and the miraculous manifestation of the awaited Mahdi. Let's just suppose for a moment that these events actually come to pass in our modern world. If these appearances happen, then I declare that I am the awaited Mahdi. I am one of those so-called individuals. Who could possibly prove their identity? How can we know if they're telling the truth or lying? Are they trustworthy? Are they imposters? Or are they just children or women? Who would investigate this? Should the police arrest them? So what exactly was this until it became clear? Let's suppose they say that someone who has reason will practice religion properly, and reason is religion and is worthy of religion. We should pause for a moment and think about this, gentlemen, and see whether what we so strongly believe in is even possible, whether it has any meaning, whether it could even be real. Maybe it's not possible at all, but there's a story, a narration, that says the Imam lifts his robe and Ali's hand is in his. For example, they say Ali's hand is in it, or that they grabbed these locks of hair, but really from Ali's descendants, for example, with his family. Did they really have this 14 centuries ago so that we could see what to do, to see if these ancient things are the same or not? Or did they create a kind of poverty by force in our era, something that has to do with his waist, with his body? This is exactly it. Back then there were other people too. For example, one of the signs is that the Ark of Moses was also a sign, the same ark that Moses was put in as a baby, that cradle he was laid in. Look, they made a cradle like that, with something that is bad for you, my actions, my choices. I have something that can prove it exists and something that can deny it. Denial is a kind of proof that makes it impossible and blocks everything. And then, sir, men must be like women, or he says a lot. And then another sign is that when the Imam appears, it will be written in the sky that this is the time of the Imam. Now, maybe it's not a miracle. Maybe the Imam is using a laser in the sky, sending messages in the sky. Aren't there entertainment messages in the sky? Don't companies use drones to display things in the sky? Quickly, don't say it's impossible. In our era, for the superpowers, if they want to prepare something in the sky, it's as easy as drinking water. With this new way of thinking, with this new mindset, all the signs and topics that have been created, none of them are a big deal. So if we assume these topics are real, and we want to see if these signs exist, it's as easy as drinking water to make something like that somewhere. Look, these are not miracles. So what is a miracle? Sir, what is the criterion? The criterion for recognizing that the Imam of our time is present is certainty. There is no such criterion like that. An ocean of narrations cannot bring even 1% certainty to anyone that this person who claims to be the Imam of our time is truly the Imam of our time. This is obvious. It doesn't lead anywhere. With these two approaches, for example, what does the concept of zuhur, appearance, mean? The most important discussion in this issue, in terms of understanding, is also the matter of zuhur. The appearance of the Imam, in other words, means the manifestation of the light of truth in the world of dust, the material world. There is a history of the Imam in the Quran that indicates this meaning. The Imam of the time means the perfect human. The perfect human is someone who is the locus of the manifestation of God's will. He is the locus of the manifestation of God's mercy. He is the locus of the manifestation of God's power, authority, and unique oneness. So this extraordinary individual, the Imam of the time, is someone who has reached such a profound and comprehensive level of knowledge regarding monotheism, sincerity, and spiritual power, that he can perfectly manifest and reflect the very essence and attributes of God through his own being. This is precisely what is meant by the Imam being the ultimate locus and mirror of divine manifestation in this world. With the appearance of someone called the Imam of the time, the perfect human being is manifested. This perfect human is called the Caliph of God, the proof of God on earth. God has promised that the earth will never be without his proof. If it were ever empty, humanity would perish. These are the Imams of guidance for the disbelievers, a means of punishment for the enemies and for the believers. They are a source of mercy, love, kindness, and guidance. And from this information it should be said that the course of history is the course of human perfection, and the most perfect human in every era is the one called the Imam, or the friend of God, or the Caliph of God, or the perfect human. The story of the Imam is, in fact, the story of human perfection. Of course, other humans also experience this process of perfection. Imam means the leader of perfection. In fact, the word Imam itself means leader. Leader of what? Leader of human perfection, leader of the human spirit and spirituality, leader of meaning, purity, and the truth of nature, and all the divine attributes and virtues within humans and among the rest of humanity. The Imam is the leader of humanity, the leader of human perfection. And this concept of manifestation means exactly this. In reality, it means the manifestation of God through humans, the manifestation of God from within humans. And that is why God himself says, "Because I wish to reveal myself." So, the Imam is specifically God's manifestation, and those who are on the path of spiritual expansion in the hierarchy also possess this same concept. That is, the manifestation of humans is by nature a place of will for manifestation. All humans want to bring their inner selves, their desires, wishes, thoughts, and ideals into manifestation and to develop them. This is an inherent trait of humans. All people, whether disbelievers or believers, have this within their hearts. Every effort or action that all humans make in any situation is so that they can bring parts of their inner selves into manifestation. What is the inner self? The thoughts of scholars, the concepts, the truths that they have experienced and understood within themselves, they want to manifest them, to realize them, to bring them to understanding. What does that mean? It means they become an imam, you see. So imamate in essence is an intrinsic characteristic and an inherent need of human beings. In fact, all humans possess it, whether they are believers or not. All humans, each group according to their own, even disbelievers according to their own. The ultimate concept is that a human being should be able to manifest God, the Spirit of God, and the divine will, all of which are essentially concepts of manifestation. And apart from this, humans have nothing else to do. There is nothing else for them. If anyone looks at their own desires, they will see that whatever they strive for is to be able to manifest a part of their own wishes and inclinations in such a way that people are not deprived of this manifestation. Religion is actually the path or the way. It is the path of the manifestation of the human being, the manifestation of God through the human being. The way, in essence, is the manifestation of God through the human being. To reveal the truth in one's own essence outwardly, to make the essence of this manifestation apparent. So in this sense, imamate exists within every human being. It is truly the believers and the elevated humans who have learned this path, which is a new way. The disbelievers do the same thing. Their intention is the same, to become the path, but that is wrong. The more they try, the more they fail. Even in realizing the initial manifestation of their own energies, they are not successful. Sometimes the material form of their desires may be realized, but the conditions are forgotten, and in the sense they intended, it does not come to fruition. In other words, all of it ends in failure and is wasted in vain. The path of religion, meaning, faith, and knowledge, in contrast to these written frameworks, is that the friends of God have always come to teach humans how to attain the power of manifestation. Now, manifestation means the manifestation of the inner self. The inner self of a human has two aspects. One is the mind and the other is the heart. In one sense, the manifestation of material desires and wishes, for example, when one wants to give them an external form, these become material things. Even spiritual wishes, if they are supposed to take on an external and physical form, this itself becomes a kind of mental, ornamental, or material attachment. Let's see, for example, manifestation is exactly the opposite of occultation. There is this belief that we are currently in a state of occultation. If we can understand this concept, we will have uncovered the entire secret of reality. What does hidden and dominant mean, and what does manifestation mean? Look, we believe in Islamic knowledge, and especially in Shia and Islamic mysticism, that God encompasses the entire universe. Even in Christian mysticism and Christian Sufism, and even in Buddhism, we have this concept in a different form, that the human being, the Christian, is essentially an inheritor of divine knowledge. God created humans for this very reason, so that he could reveal himself. We have discussed this in detail in some writings. Here, we are just briefly touching on it. Look, the entire mechanism of creation, the mechanism of nature, the earth and the sky, and everything that exists within them, every single element of the natural world found here on Earth, the diverse animals, the lush plants, the green vegetation, the distant stars, and the vast heavens, all of these are profound and beautiful manifestations of God's divine attributes. But what exactly do we mean when we speak about God's attributes? That is to say, we are speaking of his entire creation. He is the almighty creator, the master designer, the supreme manager, the changer of all things, the giver and the provider. He is the giver of life and the giver of death, the destroyer and the preserver, the affirmer, the shaper, the sustainer, and the distributor of all blessings. All of these attributes belong to him, right? In the end, it must all come back to this fundamental truth. But as for humans, God says, I have purchased them myself. I have breathed my own spirit into them. Humans are the place where God's essence is manifested, you see? That's why it is said, and we have the verses, that God created the heavens and the earth, and he made everything subservient to the existence of humans. That is, he acted so that everything would be surrendered to humans. You see, God has submitted all his attributes to his own essence, and it is his essence that, who can truly be surrendered? Only humans. One must be so surrendered to God's essence that they can fully grasp all of God's attributes, or comprehend the universe better, or become a true, sincere believer. To the extent that one is surrendered to God's essence, they can embrace the entirety of the universe within themselves. That is why the way of the Imam in the Quran is such that all the poetry about Hussein and the films reflect this same principle. Wherever there is steadfastness, reliance, contemplation, and focus in the world, it is present in the being of the Imam and his lovers. Why is that? Because he is obedient to God. It is only natural for him to be this way. Just as my hand is surrendered to my will, isn't that right? They say, he makes death for me. Look, this is the motivation for this journey.